Alright guys, welcome to RC Mojo. This week we've got a well, it's an excavator anyway, or a digger. This is the recent 1593 version, which as I understand is more or less the same as the older yellow ones, but with a bit more oomph in the rams, so you can actually move stuff around without them struggling. Plus, it's green. The digger is supposed to be 1/14 scale, but as usual we'll find it's a bit smaller than Tamir's idea of 1/14. It's probably closer to 1/16 really. I won't let that detract too much though, as long as we can have some fun with it, that's what matters most. The box it comes in is pretty big and fairly well decorated. It doesn't quite have the shelf space wow factor of a Tamir, but I think I'd probably check it out if it was on the shelves of a real model shop. It could do with some more details and stats to get the juices flowing though. One thing the box does have going for it is it's got an enormous reinforced handle. It'll actually take the weight of the digger without worrying too much about ripping the cardboard. With a bit of thought, the box could work pretty well for storage and transport. The digger does of course come with a manual. You'll have to keep in mind that this is really just a rather nice toy grade RC rather than hobby grade, so it's not the most comprehensive. But there's enough in there to tell you what the controls do and how to deal with the battery. If we lift the top off the polystyrene insert, we get to see the digger in all its upside down glory. Again, being toy grade, it's completely ready to run. All you'll need to do is power it up and off it's going to go. Speaking of power, we have a 2S lithium ion pack for power. It's got separate power and balance leads, so it's going to be simple to charge it with a hobby grade charger. It's only 1200 milliamp hour, but it should run the digger long enough that you're going to get bored first. When the supplies at the shops are a bit better, we might make a high capacity 18650 pack so we can leave it turned on all day. The digger comes with a USB charger whose output is rated at 4.2 volts and 800 milliamps, which is a bit strange as lithium ion packs are much higher voltage. I'm going to guess there's a bit of a misprint there, but either way it's going to take 90 odd minutes to charge the included pack from flat, which is good enough. I'd still recommend using a proper hobby grade charger though that does lithium ion. It's easier to identify battery problems before they become big problems. The transmitter is a bit of a strange one. It's some freakish PlayStation-like thing. It's obviously designed for smaller hands than mine, and the gimbals are just awful. Designed for thumbing rather than pinching. But that's passable, as again it's a toy digger, so it's going to be targeted at people who've grown up with a twin-stick console joypads. The only other thing in the box is the digger itself, which just lifts out ready to go. It feels nice and solid with lots of heft, which is rather important. If it were lightweight, it would tip over the first time you had any weight in the bucket. And speaking of the bucket, it's metal, which is a nice touch. Most of the rest of the digger is plastic, of course, but it does make it feel like it's got some quality to it. Oddly, a couple of the fake hydraulic lines have popped out of their mounting holes. Not sure if that's intended or not, but it's simple enough to press them back into place. Right, power. First we'll need to power up the transmitter. On the back is the bay for 3 AA cells, but to stop kids eating them, it's kept closed with a small self-tapper. Once removed, the cover's still clipped in, so we won't have to bother putting the screw back in. We need 3 AAs to power it. Now, I'm not sure how long they're going to last, but it's probably going to be a really long time because it's a modern 2.4 GHz radio. If we turn it on, the red LED starts blinking, which I believe is kind of like its bind mode as it's looking for a digger to talk to. On the digger itself, we need to remove the battery cover at the back. It's fairly well hidden with a little twist latch to secure it. All we do is twist the lock 90 degrees and lift off the cover to reveal the red Beck connector. Before we plug the battery in though, we'll need to make sure the power switch is off just in case it decides to do something daft when we connect the battery. Okay, now we can plug the battery in, refit the lid and twist the lock. Now, probably due to not watching what I'm doing, we seem to be missing a bit of footage of the initial power-up. There's not much to it though. The manual simply says turn on the digger and transmitter to bind them, with no particular order. Not the clearest instructions, but it seemed to work okay. Whatever order I did it in, everything went just fine. The annoying bit though, when you turn it on, it comes up with the red and blue party lights in the cab, and the most annoying engine sound I've heard since playing racing games on a Sinclair Spectrum. Okay, well, it's not quite that bad, but at least by pressing the two big buttons on the transmitter, you can turn the lights and sound off. And now back to the live action. The manual says the digger has 22 functions, which seems like quite a lot. I'm not sure how they're counting them though, because I make it 8. Maybe 14 if you count the up and down separately. That doesn't really matter though, it's a digger with digger functions. Okay, on the right stick we have the bucket control on the left and right stick movement. The left stick left and right rotates the cab, up and down moves the arm, and up and down on the right stick moves the boom. All of these controls are fully proportional, which is rather nice, and despite the slightly dodgy gimbals on the transmitter, you do get a good level of control. Certainly enough to be able to load up a truck without crashing into it. The rams seem to have plenty of power too. It's not the best test, but there's enough oomph to lift the digger by the arm without anything sounding like it's struggling. The gear trains are a little bit noisy though. I think the only thing with the stock setup that's a bit disappointing is the drive control. They're on and off. Not proportional, so manoeuvring is a bit of an art. You have to dab the buttons to move in small steps. It's a relatively minor gripe though. Once you've got the digger in position, you're going to be using the rotate and arm controls most of the time. And since we didn't get to hear the sounds at the beginning, we're going to turn them back on. Yep, all we get is a constant grumble. Then when we move the arm, we get a different grumble. I think even the old Heng Long tanks have a more interactive setup. A shame, but at least you can turn it off from the transmitter. The other button turns on a red and blue flashing light in the cab, which is a bit strange. I seem to remember the old smaller digger would play a tune with the lights, so it might just be a vestigial feature. It would have been better if they'd replaced the coloured lights with some white ones, maybe a bright spotlight looking down in front of the cab. And that's about it for the digger. I've not gone out digging with it yet to get it dirty, because the plan is to pull it apart and fit some hobby grade electronics so we can actually use a decent transmitter. That'll give us a more precise control plus proportional driving controls. Now I've not decided whether we should use off-the-shelf ESCs and radio gear or design a drop-in PCB with most of the gubbins ready to go. Either way, it should make for a fun project. As always then, thanks for watching, like if you liked, subscribe if you haven't, and leave a comment if there's something on your mind. Bye guys!